Hey, Coach Chris here, coming to you from the red chair. I'm going to start a new series, and there's going to be some things that I want to kind of discuss and I want to work through, and I want to really present to you, the audience, to the listener, that things that I've been learning, things that I've been going through, things that I've been kind of experiencing as I journey through the red chair. And that journey is really a lot of different things. And so, but one thing is for sure, it's been a focus. And so that's what I really want to talk about today is being focused and being grounded and really kind of getting my, for lack of a better term, the emotional awareness and maybe my total being together, my total person coming all together. And I'll talk a little bit about what that means and what that looks like. So as you probably know, I've written a book called The Red Chair Experience, and that book is a daily inspiration for success in life and business. And as I wrote the book, there were a number of things that I was going through in my life and things that had happened and things that I realized as I was writing it that I had got to experience in my life, whether it was recent or in the past, whether it was the way I grew up or going through college or going through marriage or going through raising kids. There are different things that came about. And all along this journey, what I realized is there are different points and different times in our lives when we get to focus and we get to kind of readjust and we get to redirect ourselves into a new spot. And this new spot, it may not be completely off base from where we were before. It's probably just a minor adjustment, a degree or two here or there. And I've heard it said before, but that if you're used to what a level is, it's slightly off center in terms of the level and using the bubble that's in the middle there. But for those of you who understand what that means, but what that really is getting to is being slightly off for a number of years. It didn't really, I couldn't quite figure it out. I couldn't quite understand where that was and where it was going. And so what happened is I realized as I wrote the book and through the years, last few years especially, there are things that we go through that we have to experience. And as a man growing up in an all-male household, my parents got divorced when I was young. I grew up with my dad and my two brothers. I'm the middle brother of three boys. And so it wasn't like there was a whole lot of emotion going on in the household. So we learned things like logic. We learned things like how to be tough and kind of man up, if you will. And I've always never really understood that term, though I've used it, and I've used it correctly and incorrectly. A lot of times in my life, I've used it incorrectly. And so this is kind of the understanding, if you will, the total understanding of where I've come from through the years and how I got to refocus and how I got to see things and really get on track to where I wanted to go. So where am I going with all this? Well, here's an opportunity to share with you what that looks like to bring logic and emotion together. I'm going to call it the gap. And the gap is not understanding how emotional intelligence and logical intelligence come together. And I was in that position for a very long time. And I feel like there are, and I know based on experience and conversations, there are a number of people like me, 10 years ago, me, that are in that gap. They're trying to figure out how to bring those two pieces together and really integrate the total self. And so that's where this is going. That's what I want to explore. And that's what I want to talk about is how do you bridge that gap and how do you pull these things together? So in the past, when I was growing up, I started my spiritual journey when I was in college, and I really learned a lot of things. And I studied the Bible extensively for a long time with a number of people. And I got the opportunity to have this great teaching and understanding. And so I really started to learn spiritually where to go and what that journey looked like. So I really dove in and started to study a lot of different things. And that helped me emotionally, but I was still stuck in that denial, if you will. And what I mean by that is this: when I would study with people and when I would tell myself is, you have to keep moving forward, because if you stop or take a look behind you, that emotional stuff will just catch up with you and knock you over, right? And I was afraid of it emotionally. I was afraid of it logically, because I thought, hey, if I catch this emotion, man, that could be the death of me, right? I didn't understand what the integration of the emotional and the logical really meant. And so, again, 10 years ago, I was starting to realize these things. I was starting to understand them and starting to pull it all together. And it really came into a clearer picture here in the last few years as I wrote my book and as I got to experience some of these life crises that we all go through, life and death and birth and a job change and moving and all of these things, right? And illness. All of these things happen within a very short span of life for me. And as a result, I got to experience this flood of emotions. And it became this radical awareness, right? Of, wow, this is a totally different place than I was expecting, or not understanding what it would look like. And all of a sudden it's like, holy mackerel, this is coming into view. And it became very, it came very quickly, and it almost knocked me over. In some cases, it did knock me over. And so one of those things that really taught me that was the death of my brother. And when my brother died, I think we all kind of go through this phase where when somebody close to you dies, you kind of stop and take a look around and go, wait a minute, what am I doing with my life? Where am I going? And what's happening with this? And what does this look like for me going forward? Now, when I was younger, my grandparents died, and they were in their 80s and 90s, and it was kind of a natural thing, right? I lost them, missed them, and was saddened by that. But it wasn't like a real blip on the radar where it was like, hey, that was somebody close in age to me. Hey, that was somebody that died unexpectedly. And I had those throughout my life. I had some unexpected deaths, but nobody really this close to me like my brother. And so that brought on a whole new wave of things. And I realized at that point, you can't keep pushing this away. You can't keep leaving this behind and denying your feelings and denying the emotion that's sitting there waiting for you to experience. Now, unfortunately, the life experience that I had, the emotion that I had in my life was when my first grandfather died. Of all my grandparents, my first grandparent to die was when I was in college, a sophomore in college. And I remember getting emotional. I remember crying when that happened. And I don't know what that was, but I remember shutting it down very quickly. And I remember feeling very uncomfortable with it. And that was one of the few times that I really got to experience that wave, that rush, that flood of emotion. Fast forward about 30 years and, well, almost 40 years, and now my brother dies. And now I'm faced with that emotion all over again. And I literally had to sit in it and not wallow in it, but to sit in it. And I've learned how to literally let emotion wash over me. So this is that radical awareness I'm talking about, right? That it became this thing that just kind of washes over you, much like a shower, much like a wave, much like somebody throwing water on you. It's this quick burst of something that what in the world do I do with that? What's really interesting to me now is now I start to see that more and more. I was listening to a book earlier today, and it was just a book by Michael Conley. And I'm listening to this book, and there's an emotional part in it. And there's this deep emotional connection with these characters. And as I'm listening, it's towards the end of the book, and I feel this rush of emotion. I never felt that before. And so, again, this radical awareness, this no longer denying these things, these feelings that were going on, and really accepting this, really taught me how to focus in my life and understand these things and see these things for what they really were. So what it's taught me is how to really integrate and again, how to bring the total self in. So it's not just the logical anymore. It's not just this, I can be tough and I can be strong and I can push through and I can be strong for these other people and I can be the rock for them and not feel things emotionally. And I'll deal with the emotions later, and though never really dealing with the emotions. And it was different being there for my parents when at my brother's funeral, right? It was different being there for my brother. It was different being there for my sister-in-law or my niece and nephew or other friends and family members that came and were a part of it. We got to share in the emotion. It wasn't, I wasn't some stoic, I wasn't some, emotionless person. I got to be a part of that and participate in that. And there wasn't a denial anymore. It was a full acceptance of it and an integration really of those things. So I know I keep mentioning that, I know I keep saying that, but that's really what it became for me. Some of these things came about as several books that I've read, and I'm a firm believer in this, that there's really nothing new under the sun. And I know that's an old psalm, or actually it's from the Song of Solomon, but there's nothing new, or Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun, meaning that the things that we get to see and experience, it's not that technology is different, and I understand that, but the emotions and the person that we are, the things that we experience, there really aren't a whole lot of new things that we get to experience. There's hundreds and millions and thousands of people that are experiencing similar things all day long, or have for years, or had years ago, or, we're not the only ones, so to speak. So when I say I believe that there's nothing new under the sun, what I mean by that is our experience may be new, but what's happening or what we're going through or the things that we're having to deal with they're not necessarily new, because they've been around for a while and other people have seen and experienced and dealt with it. So I got to read a book years ago called The Surrender Experiment. And that for me was really kind of the first step in understanding what it meant to really surrender to the feelings and the emotions and everything that was going on. And going through and understanding therapy and speaking with counselors or speaking with people who are much more knowledgeable and help me to understand and dig out these things that I had never seen or dug out before and talked about. And so another book, and I've become a real fan of reading books a lot to gain a better understanding of where we're at and what's going on, is a book named Just Listen by Mark Goldstein. And that taught me really how to listen to and communicate properly with people. Doesn't mean I've got it figured out, because I don't have all this figured out. But what I do know is I continue to learn. Even at my age, I continue to learn and I continue to see and I continue to develop. So there are other books, and I really could continue on with that, but there's a number of books out there that speak to you and can speak to you about what you're dealing with or what you're going through or what's happening in your life. Writing a book for me was also another way of therapy. It was a way of really talking through and getting out the emotion and that side of me that was different and that I didn't know what was going on and didn't know how to experience it properly. But I really learned through all of those things and through all these books that I've read and through conversations that I've had with other people. So I say all that to say, this is going to be really an exploration of how do you integrate, how do you have that total self-integration of the logical and the emotional, and how do you bring it all together, and how do you bridge that gap? So that's what I'm going to be talking through. That's what I'm going to be working on and discussing on this. I'm going to send out an email that's going to be talking about this as well, and maybe go a little bit further on some of these things, but it's going to be tied into this video. And so if you want to be a part of that, please just message me or let me know if you want to be a part of that. And if you don't, that's okay too. But come and join and be a part of this community that I want to develop and really help to move forward, to find a way to bridge that gap, because I really believe that there's a lot of men in that 40+ range that are experiencing that gap, that are experiencing that disconnect, if you will, between the emotional and the logical. And we're all taught the logical, we're just not taught the emotional. And how do we bridge that, and how do we come together on it? Again, I'm not perfect. I haven't figured it out yet. I'm still working through some of those things, but I do know this, my experience and all has taught me a ton on what needs to happen as we go through this experience in life. And so come join me on the journey. We're going to take this walk. And like I said, with today, the focus is on the conversation is on focus. And how do we focus and get grounded? The thing that I've really understood and really come to kind of an awareness of, this radical awareness of, is when you get focused and you get grounded, you're able to see things a whole lot clearer. You're able to deal with things a whole lot more emotionally and logically. For a long time, I used to think that I just needed to clear out the emotions so I could see things logically. There's some truth to that, but you're missing out on a whole side of things that really need to apply. Simon Sinek talks a lot about that when he talks about leaders eat last, right? And John Maxwell talks a lot about that when he talks about leadership and the core values of great leaders. We need that. We need both the emotional and the physical strength, right? The emotional intelligence, the logic, but we also need that softer side, the emotional side that can empathize with people and understand maybe what they're going through or what they've been through. And when we do that, and when we see that, we can be more focused. So how do we tune into that? How do we focus on that? How do we get grounded? How do we really find that place where we can become this better person and help other people? That's what I'm going to explore.